Welcome to All Elite Reviewing, or AER, the only show that you can hear as a podcast out on YouTube, where we talk about every single show that All Elite Wrestling has out these days, which we now actually have a new show on there. We have Rampage in addition to Dark, Elevation, and Dynamite now. And so I am Shamik Ghosh, and joining me is...
I'm Josh Starnes.
And he just came back from the Grand Canyon, folks. So I don't know if he has any stories that relate to wrestling out there, but I'm sure he can tell us if he does. But what Josh did is keep track of some of the Forbidden Door type stuff that occurred with AEW, because as you'll see, there's a lot of cross promotion going on with AEW and a lot of companies right now, and a lot of people doing big matches everywhere. So Josh, what do you want to talk about there?
Yeah, I mean, not only are we reviewing everything All Elite, but we're reviewing everything through the Forbidden Door, is behind the Forbidden Door as well, not to be confused with Behind the Green Door. And it's all over the place. I mean, Impact titles, the Forbidden Green, that's a different kind of Forbidden Door. I mean, Impact titles were defended on two different Dynamite shows this week, and we have AEW signed members going out and participating all over the place. This past weekend were two major shows that have been being pushed throughout this entire summer, at the top of which was Triplemania 29 in Mexico City, from Reina to Mexico, because one of the many belts held by belt collector Kenny Omega is the AAA Mega Campeonero belt. And he has been being pursued for that belt after defeating all comers. He's been being pursued for that belt by Andrade El Idolo, also of AEW. And in fact, although it hasn't been on the show itself, they have taped several promos for this match throughout the summer between Kenny Omega and Don Callis on one side, and Andrade El Idolo and Conan, who is the booker of AAA, on the other side, and preparing for this match. And this is also the end of three giant world title defenses that not the last of which we will talk about as we get to the end of this episode, as some big things happened on Dynamite with the premiere of Rampage. But coming into the summer, there were three giant world title matches planned for Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing for the AEW Championship in his three-way with Pac and Orange Cassidy, at Slammiversary against Sami Callihan, and finally closing out the summer, Triplemania versus Andrade. And in fact, there were multiple AEW talents there. Brian Cage still works regularly in AAA, and the Lucha Brothers are still represented there at where they are the AAA Tag Team Champions. So even before we got to that, there was a three-way, and what for my money was the best match in Triplemania, was a three-way match for the AAA tag team titles. The Lucha Brothers versus Hijo del Vikingo and Laredo Kid, who's been on, one of whom has been on AEW a lot, and the other of whom everyone wants on AEW, just been held up by visa issues due to COVID. And then the surprise team of Black Taurus and Brian Cage. And they had a hell of a match. Hijo del Vikingo is fantastic, and we really need to see him on AEW one day. But the Lucha Brothers managed to retain, and for what was, for my money, the best match of the evening. We also saw the Forbidden Door that AEW may have kicked it open, but multiple entities have been walking through, because there was a title for title match for the women's championships. Deonna Purrazzo, the current Impact Women's Champion, Knockouts Champion, did a title for title match against Fabi Apache for the AAA Women's Championship, the Reina de Reinas, and she won. So now the AAA champion is over in Impact. And she took the time to win to also call out, both on this current week's Impact and at AAA, AEW for not swinging that door open more for more women's talent to come through it. So I would not be surprised to see either some of our women wrestlers go over to Impact to challenge, and we've already had one, because Thunder Rosa actually did go to Impact to challenge Deonna Purrazzo during Slammiversary. I wouldn't be surprised to see more of them going that way, but I also would not be surprised to see Deonna Purrazzo showing up on a future Dynamite and having some sort of major challenge against some of our top headliner women's champions.
If I may interject here quick, see later down the card. It's funny that you're like, oh, don't be surprised when we see them on their show or they come on our show. Really, what's happening right now is, according to me, my hyperbolic take on this is that what we're seeing unfold behind this is basically like Impact, a division of AEW. That's really.
I don't think they would like to hear it, but it sometimes feels that way. And it's like a division of everything.
Two AEW people challenging for an Impact belt on AEW. It's like they were just, it's like we're just adding their belts to to our mythology at AEW. That's what it really feels like.
So it's certainly a big part of that. I mean, we're also doing NJPW belts on AEW and NWA belts on AEW, and it's going all everywhere that along those lines, because as last week, Layla Hirsch won a Top Contenders match for the NWA World Championship, which she is going to challenge for at an NWA pay-per-view coming up in 2 weeks, the NWA Empower pay-per-view against Camille, who has been, when we get to Dynamite, was promoing on Dynamite this week. After showing up on Dynamite last week to make the challenge official, was promoing on Dynamite this week. So we had promos on Dynamite this week for an NWA pay-per-view coming up in several weeks. It is and Impact is out there already putting out ads for their big Bound for Glory pay-per-view in the fall, and the big part of their push for it is all the company, like it's basically they've put NJPW and AEW and ROH and NWA logos all over it, and said like everyone is going to be here on this pay-per-view. You don't know who they are, what they're going to be doing, but this is going to be like the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. And even Ring of Honor, who has attempted to stay out of it for this whole time, is out on Twitter today saying, if we kicked open the Forbidden Door, what matches would you like to see? They're looking, they're looking at it and they're going like, okay, everybody's doing business. They're looking at it and saying like, everybody's doing business and they're getting good business out of it. There's no reason for us to stay out of it. And they can't, because Andrade, who basically Andrade's wrestling family is all in Ring of Honor right now, or WWE, like Roosh and Dragon Lee and Bestia del Ring. These are all guys who were part of his factions in CMLL years ago. And he has apparently behind the scenes made no bones about it that he wants them all to come to AEW. So Ring of Honor has like two choices. They can go through the Forbidden Door and make a working relationship, or they can just wait for those guys' contracts to be up and head and take a lot of talent with them when they head to AEW. So I suspect we'll see something there. Which brings us to Andrade himself. And speaking of Andrade's wrestling family, he shocked everyone. And I mean, this is really endemic of wrestling in 2021, where he turned his back on longtime friend Conan and said he didn't want Conan helping him in the match, because when he came out for his Mega Championship match, he came out with the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, seen for the first time ever in AAA, cornered Andrade in his match against Kenny Omega, who was aided not by Don Callis but by Conan. And there are pictures, and apparently Charlotte was there. I mean, obviously she can't go out on TV, but there's pictures of her, in the back, because she traveled with him and skipped out on didn't skip out because apparently it was well known in advance, but did not attend a WWE house show in Charlotte, North Carolina, in order to be at the AAA show. And
he's named after or whatever. So there you go.
There you go. But there was quite a bit of
towns in North Carolina or what?
Yes, because I grew up in Durham, North Carolina. No, Raleigh and Durham, two different cities, and Durham, North Carolina, which is many, many, many times superior to Charlotte. Charlotte can suck it.
Okay. Well, I heard it doesn't take much to be superior to Charlotte.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they had a good match. I'm starting to see the return of really good Andrade. He still can be better, but they had a good match. Had a lot of shenanigans. Apparently, as we will get to, there were some changes in booking that have been going around, and we'll talk about that, especially as we get to the end of this episode. And I'll come back to this due to Hangman Page. Hangman Page is getting ready to have a baby, so he has left AEW for a couple of weeks for paternity leave, which has changed.
Why are they going around?
Yeah,
getting their baby.
So that changed the main event of that changed the main event of all. I mean, you want to see who's at the center of the Forbidden Door. That changed the main event of All Out, which is having these ripple effects into every other promotion that is attached to the Forbidden Door. So as a result, Kenny Omega actually retained over Andrade when everyone expected Andrade to actually win. So there are still, which leaves open a lot of possibilities down the line. There will be a Triplemania Regia sometime later this fall, which will be like their next big show. And there's an expectation that either Psycho Clown or Hijo del Vikingo could jump in and challenge. So, you know, I don't expect him to hold on to that title through the end of this year, but he's going to have it for a bit longer. But it was quite a match. The highlight being Ric Flair getting in the ring and Ric Flair and Andrade trade. If you haven't seen the gifts for this, they're great. Trading chops against Kenny Omega. So now Kenny Omega can say he's been chopped by Ric Flair. And then they did stereo figure fours. Andrade put Kenny Omega in the figure four, and Ric Flair put Conan in the figure four. And it was a ton of fun. It was great.
He's putting me in a bigger four.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. And then the other big event was New Japan Pro Wrestling, which has been not able to have the large caliber shows that they wanted to have in Japan due to the COVID outbreak and the lockdown, and has not had access to a lot of the non-native wrestlers due to the quarantine needs, which has sent a lot of people leaving the country. Have been trying to get around that by building up their US brand, which tapes out of their LA studio. And so they have been, the last several weeks, been building up to a large outdoor event at the Los Angeles Coliseum in JPW Resurgence, which was held this week, which included several AEW wrestlers. Jon Moxley was there with Yuji Nagata in a tag team match against the Good Brothers, which they lost, which led to the Good Brothers challenging against GOD. Hikuleo was there. Switchblade Jay White, who we have seen in Impact quite a bit recently, won his match. And at the very end, and his promo after his match said people could expect him to see him in rings all around the country, including New Japan Strong, Impact, and AEW. So don't be surprised if Switchblade Jay. There has been a lot of tension between Switchblade and Kenny Omega recently. They had a face-off on Impact where Switchblade derided them for being old News Bullet Club while he's new Bullet Club. So that could spill into AEW very likely. Will Ospreay, the most recent IWGP World Champion, who had to vacate due to back injuries, returned at Resurgence to reclaim and say he can't go back to Japan itself to wrestle the man he calls the interim champion, Shingo Takagi. So he's going to be here in the U.S. for a while. Expect to see him a lot on New Japan Strong, but he also made it known that you don't be surprised if you see him showing up in Impact or see him showing up on AEW. So, and Will Ospreay, who's one of those tip of the top card guys, is showing up on shows in the U.S. is a big deal. So if he shows up on AEW and challenges, especially if he's carting around the IWGP belt, that's a big deal, especially for the relationship between those two companies. And in the main event of Resurgence, I have a question here. Wait. Yeah.
I have a question real quick here, because you talk about how, like they're talking about, well, don't be surprised to see me on Impact or AEW. Like people are saying, don't be surprised to see me on this or this show. We know that the permutation so far goes that AEW was up here and that people are just, going up and doing with them. Is there a lot of like NJPW Impact collaboration that doesn't have AEW?
Yes. Yes, okay. There's direct New Japan crossover that goes just to Impact that you never see on AEW. Okay. The Good Brothers are signed to both. They've been wrestling on New Japan Strong.
Well, they're built from Japan, so yeah.
And they've been wrestling on Impact, where they have been the Impact Tag Team Champions. But actually, they traded. The Impact Tag Team Championships was going back and forth between New Japan teams. The team of Juice Robinson and David Finlay won it off of them and were actually wearing the Impact titles in Japan for a while. Switchblade Jay White has been on Impact television for like the last 3 or 4 weeks, ever since he appeared at the end of Slammiversary. He has not appeared on AEW at all. This is the first time he's ever mentioned AEW, but he's been on Impact. Recruiting new members for Bullet Club, and where he's been having some of his face-offs against Kenny Omega. So there is definitely some of that. And so that's why you got to watch. That's why we cover the whole world of it, to see all of the different pieces and permutations. And as we've seen, what we saw with Resurgence, where suddenly people who've only been in that Impact New Japan relationship are now mentioning AEW. And you have had AEW people only having interactions with some New Japan guys in Impact, and it hasn't spilled over into AEW yet. But if you've seen it, you've seen all the different pieces of it. And now we're starting to see those permutations shift and merge, where some of that Impact stuff is going to start looks like it's going to start spilling over into AEW. And then in the main event was Lance Archer versus Hiroshi Tanahashi for the IWGP US Heavyweight Championship. And Hiroshi Tanahashi won and took that championship. Jon Moxley was ringside for the entire match. You know, he has been promoting against Tanahashi on Dynamite recently.
Right.
He was very displeased to see Tanahashi win and walked off in a huff. And there are rumors going around that he has specifically requested a match against a top New Japan guy for All Out. So what it looks like to me is this match from the main event of Resurgence is set up Jon Moxley's singles match at All Out, and a Jon Moxley Tanahashi singles match on a AEW pay-per-view is a big. The only thing that would be a bigger deal than that would be if Kota Ibushi or Kazuchika Okada came over from Japan to have a match over here. And they're not going to right now because they're needed for shows there and the quarantine restrictions are too long. But that would be like the only thing that's a bigger deal than that.
Right.
That's it. So that was some big stuff. Big stuff happened through the Forbidden Door this week.
Right. And all this matters for character development, you know, because like when you see these people, when you know this backstory behind them, then it's on, and then you're like, oh yeah, I heard about what that guy and what he did to that other guy. And like these things kind of all come into play when you eventually see them on like that stuff. So
and it's stuff that even goes back to Dynamite, because if people remember back to the beginning of the summer, you know, Jon Moxley was promoting against Yuji Nagata, wanted him over here for a match. Yuji Nagata came over. They had a match. They had a hard-hitting match, and they showed respect at the end. And then when Jon Moxley needed a replacement partner at this New Japan event because his old partner couldn't make it due to COVID restrictions, Yuji Nagata stepped up. So it all fits. If you pay attention, it all gets rewarded eventually. And that's why you got to pay attention to Dark and Dark Elevation like we do. I guess, and I'm going to stretch, speaking of elevation, I'm going to stretch the word rewarded in a long ways. We were, I suppose, theoretically rewarded for paying attention to the Joey Janela, Sunny Kiss storyline all of these weeks. It finally made some
do not pay attention.
forward progress. Oh, God. I just don't know. I don't know why it's taken so long. So I don't know if you want to describe for everyone what happened and the big changes.
Kicked in the face during that. And so they finally pushed the button on that whole thing, and then they haven't done anything beyond that yet. So it's for me TBD to where exactly happens to this feud. Given how long this turn took, I'm assuming it's gonna be super impressive here at least. But yeah, right. So
it seemed like it's been going like forever. They should have done this like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Like it was funny up to a point. As soon as it stopped being funny, which was a long time ago.
I mean, would you turn around on this feud? Stop the fuss thing? Like, would you be okay with it then?
Maybe. I got to see what happens with the feud and what they do with it, and what they do with Joey.
Okay.
The only thing I can figure is that they were waiting until they could have fans, so he could do it in a ring in front of fans, so everybody can boo him. Because everybody did boo Joey and give him the finger the way you're supposed to.
Right.
But
that's
I mean,
Elevation this week had a crowd, but Dark did not.
Yeah, and that is going to be probably what it's going to be going forward. And that's what they have said, is that what you're going to see is when they're on the road taping, especially on weeks where they're taping Rampage on a Wednesday, they said mostly what you're going to expect, you can expect, is they will tape Dynamite and Rampage back to back, and they're going to tape Dark Elevation matches around those, either right before or right after. So expect Elevation to kind of remain right around this 1 hour mark. They're going to be taping Dark in a separate studio environment. So probably something more like NWA or the early COVID Dynamite shows, where it's in a smaller space with only a couple hundred people, and probably it's mostly wrestlers ringside as opposed to actual fans. And so those can be much longer with a lot of greener talent that's getting early TV time in a ring, as opposed to being in front of a big. Whereas Elevation is going to be more about what's right before match. You're always going to be coming out in front of multiple thousand people. So they're going to be putting people who are going to get a good crowd reaction on that one.
Yeah.
And if you look at
so is this? I was going to ask. Is this whole thing that's going on? Is it is this born of the taping dilemma with what to do with all these wrestlers and venues?
Some of it,
or is it more of a COVID thing, or like both?
I think it's not as much a COVID thing, because they've obviously been willing to do it up until Rampage. I think it's a born of, we have all of these wrestlers, but I think it's also part of a plan they were coming up with when they started getting all these wrestlers. So it's one thing to keep in mind is like, they don't have all of these wrestlers. Only a fairly small number of them are signed to exclusive AEW deals, where AEW has like first look at them and has to approve any bookings they take elsewhere. All these other people, most of them, even ones who are appearing one after the other, even like 2.0 or Daniel Garcia, are not signed. So they are here on per match deals. And basically they are here partly to see if they can get better, and partly to see if they can spark something to the point where they can get signed. And that's really what Dark is for. And you can get some of that just from seeing people, in a gym by itself, but you get a lot more from seeing how they work a TV match. And I think that's, they don't have like a development. They they don't have a farm territory. They don't have an OVW or NXT. So this is about as close as they get to it, where, there are a lot of affiliated training programs like QT Marshalls and Dustin Rhodes that's going to get people trained up to a certain point. But then beyond that point, they need to start putting them in front of people and seeing how they work on TV and how they work on a crowd, and seeing if they can get themselves up to the point. I think especially with like Dark, the idea seems to be, or at least this is how it has worked, is that it's a stepping stone to getting themselves over, starting with matches on Dark, where they may be losing a bunch of them, but if you can get yourself over while losing every match, you've really gotten yourself over. And we saw like the height of that this week with Fuego del Sol, who has gone through this entire thing of Dark matches to Elevation matches to getting big pops. I mean, it's other stuff. It's stuff outside of that too. But a lot of the people we're talking about, including people who were on Main Event this week, went through this. Red Velvet came up through getting, as an indie talent, getting squashed on Dark, but getting more and more ring time, getting better and better to the point where she could get moved up to Elevation, and is now a semi fixture on Dynamite. And we're seeing, quite a few like Bear Country, which reunited on Elevation this week after the long injury. Yeah. And I think what you're going to get with Dark and Dark Elevation is it's going to be basically their development program. An indie talent that's good enough to be on TV, or someone who's gotten through the full training thing, goes on Dark for a while, gets used, learns how to find the hard cam and find the cameras, and gets used to working on camera. And once they've got, up to that point, they start going on to Elevation with a bunch of the higher level guys. And then they're getting worked on matches to the point where they're in front of thousands of people and getting used to being in front of thousands of people. So they're working really high level matches to show that they can fit in. And they're, if they're starting to get over, they're also starting to get into like their first storylines, probably storylines that will stay on Dark and stay on Elevation, but their first storylines that they can start building through until they get to a point where like you're Lee Johnson or somebody, like, all right, we're going to try you on Dynamite and see if it works. If it works, it works. And you are on your way. And, that's where a lot of their success story. Griff Garrison came out of that. I think it's kind of organically going into that, but he came out of that. Some of the wingmen came, like Cesar Bononi and JD Drake, came out of that. Kylan King came out of that. And, this is about as close as we're getting now to like their new homegrown talent, and mixing that with all the guys that they're signing, like Malachi Black and Miro and whatnot.
Hmm.
And
Right,
it gives
yeah.
the mid card something to do, so they don't get rusty. They don't get ring rust because they're not going to be on TV, even with 3 hours of TV. But there's definitely like that dichotomy, because we saw that with Elevation, which is nice, a nice tidy 40 minutes and super easy to watch, and everyone on there is a main card person who just who may not necessarily have had something to do this week or just needed some wins. Red Velvet was there getting some wins because she needed them. The person, and I think I've mentioned her a few times, the person she was wrestling against was Renee Michelle, who has been on Dark and Elevation quite a bit. So she's someone who is going through this. They obviously have like her look, like her ring work. So they're just getting her up to, she might be like another Kylan King or someone. They're just getting her up to the point where maybe they start. Don't be surprised when one day we see her tried out on Dynamite and see if she's got a place on Dynamite or not. Tesha Price was another one of those. Julia Hart was one of those.
Yeah,
so
and then of course also had like Captain Sean Dean getting
a win. I don't think it's his first win, but it's one of his few, and like a 10-second win. He squashed.
That's what I was gonna ask. It was like his first win, but right?
I don't think it's his first win. And he is actually he is actually technically signed, but he doesn't do Dynamite very often. Hopefully he'll get some stuff on Rampage. I feel like this was more part of a thing. So he was this was all of Dark for this past episode was actually taped last week for Fight for the Fallen, and he was one of the spearheads for the Fight for the Fallen stuff they did with the Wounded Warrior Project and bringing in a bunch of Wounded Warrior guys in the crowd. So I feel like they kind of did that to give him a win in front of those people and show him congratulating those people and do some PR stuff. But that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
You also had and we see more and more, and I think this is also part of Elevation, is where people are going to promo. People who aren't on Dynamite necessarily are going to promo, get used to their promo skills, build up storylines to move stuff into Dynamite. Because we had a promo this week from Daniel Garcia and 2.0, who had a great match against.
Who the hell are these guys? So, am I supposed to know about it? First of all, Daniel Garcia, when I see he doesn't have bad promo skills, and his in-ring seems fine, but his presentation is very fucking bland. It's very just the ring gear doesn't work for me. The way his look does not work for me at all. He needs to do something, not just look like literally. Wrestler, didn't he cycle 30? He just started maybe 3 and said, fuck it, I'm just going to go on with this character. That's what it feels like when I look at Daniel Garcia. And then when you see 2.0, which I'm like, what happened to 1.0? What's the joke here, first of all? But that's fine. Let's move past that. They're 2.0. And they talk especially, was it Jeff Parker? He talks like a cartoon villain, all the time.
Yes,
way too expressive and everything. It's just, to me, bad acting. And they got so much TV time this week. And they were on literally every show.
I think part of it's because, so they had their match. I'll get into who they are in a second. They had their match last week in the trio against John Moxley and Darby Allin and Eddie Kingston, which was super, super fun. It had one of the biggest meme moments of wrestling of the week when Jeff Parker started to mark out for Sting on the side of the ring before getting just clobbered by Darby Allin. So I think being able to do something that well on TV worked and is giving them more time. But it's also who they are. So who they are. 2.0 is a tag team known as Everrise, which has been on NXT for the last 5 years. So they've never really gotten a push, but they've been there. So they have a lot of experience, and most particularly, they have a lot of high-level TV experience and know how to do it. They were among some of the recent cuts from NXT that have been going on. And in fact, the big story this past week is you had
good odds
13 or 14 people were cut this past Friday, right before Rampage started. It's crazy. But yeah, so they were one of the team. I mean, they were one of those groups that was actually in a program and got cut while they were in the middle of a program. It was ridiculous. So they were brought last week was a tryout for them to see, and they smashed out of the park. But I think their big thing, besides they have good in ring work, they'll never be more than maybe at best top of the mid card, but that's fine. They can put over good teams and have good matches with good teams that are headed up. And unlike some of the other teams that have been moving up the elevation ranks, they can talk on TV. They have a lot of experience. I love Bear Country. It's not clear yet. They're quite ready for that. Same with Top Flight. I mean, Top Flight, once they're back together, and we're going to talk a lot about that this week on Dynamite, is up front for a big push. But they need kind of like more talking, and they're going to need teams like 2.0 to go against and to beat. So 2.0 is like another version of the Hybrid 2. They can talk and they can work.
No,
no. In the sense, no, in the sense, no, hang on. In the sense that they have a lot of TV wrestling experience, and they can talk and they can work in the ring and they can make their opponents look better. They don't have to be trained up from scratch in order to do that. Like AEW, if AEW is going to be bringing up a bunch of these guys like this to the dark elevation, they need experienced people for them to wrestle against and eventually.
Okay, so what's Daniel Garcia's deal then?
Daniel Garcia is a really, really, really well-respected indie wrestler, and he is more like a Wheeler Yuta or a Darby Allin for that sense. Someone who's been on the indie scene a lot, has a lot of good things said about him on the indie scene, has not attempted to go into a big company. In fact, he had like a 60-minute Iron Man match with Wheeler Yuta, a really good Iron Man match with Wheeler Yuta, like the Saturday before his singles match. In fact, they even referenced it on Dynamite. But so that's where he's an indie wrestler, which is kind of why his gear looks so where it is. And he doesn't have, and he's going out there with 2.0 because he's not really got a lot of TV time. He's been on the indie circuit. So they're trying him out for a regular spot on Dynamite because they think he's got a lot of growth potential. He doesn't need to be going through a school and not through everything. He's been in a lot of matches. He's got a lot of ring time. But now so now that needs to get translated into TV time. And then obviously they've gone for that. And then we'll talk about it. We had what I thought was a short but good singles match with Darby Allin, who's a guy just a lot like him. So what they see in Daniel Garcia is is potentially another Darby Allin or Jungle Boy, someone with on the indies with a lot of potential who could turn into a main event player. It's too early to say which way. So they're testing him out to see if they think that he might mesh well. And then if he does, expect to see him come in and start that 1 to 2 year process they've been doing of getting indie guys ready to be, Orange Cassidy's, Jungle Boys, Darby Allin's, that sort of thing. Okay. That's why he's here. That's why he's getting that push. And 2.0 is getting that push to help him out while he goes through this. The rest of Elevation, I don't know if there's anything else.
On every program. That's impressive.
Yeah, well, expect to see him, and you can tell because he's already getting wins on Dark and losses on Dynamite. And he's getting Dynamite TV time. And I know you were talking about like why are they here and they're getting like TV time when other tag teams aren't. But like, what other tag teams are we seeing like on Dark and Dark Elevation that aren't getting TV time who should be?
Well, at least I was happy to see, even though you compared them to TH2, at least TH2 came back as a tag team.
Yeah,
fought again this week. We haven't even seen that in a while. They've been doing singles stuff.
TH2.
So, I guess that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm afraid. I know how much you like him, and I like him, but we're TH2. I don't think is at the level that they're going to be at. They're not somebody who's going to be getting like a lot of. They're not somebody who's going to be getting a lot of TV time. They'll get TV time when they need to put over an act on the rise. That's what they're here for. They'll get dark time to get ring time and keep wins up, and they'll get TV time when it's time for them to lose, or occasionally win to get some heat on the new babyface act that's going up, but mostly lose to help put the new babyface act.
I guess if you're going to push 2.0, it's fine to push them as. Don't make me cheer for them. That's fine.
And 2.0 is probably going to end up in that same space. Is probably what's going to happen because they're a similar type. All right. But like the others, you either got guys who are hurt or guys who are just in between. Like I felt like they were building Varsity Blondes and Acclaimed up to a Dynamite match, but obviously that's not going to happen now. Max Caster has been temporarily put on ice and Acclaimed with him.
Is that what happened? I didn't hear anything about what happened. So
they haven't said. No one said anything, but he was not around. They did not have a match. Varsity Blondes did not have a match when they were scheduled to have a match. They had a match and it was not on Dark. They did a match for Elevation that was recorded and then not aired. And Acclaimed was removed from.
So is it an actual suspension or like a hey, let's cool it, kind of forget about it?
Well, they haven't said anything publicly, so I think it's a hey, let's cool it. They have not come out and said he's suspended, but he's not on TV right now. He's not even on Dark right now. The Acclaimed have been removed from the tag team rankings, and they've kind of arbitrarily pushed Jurassic Express and the Varsity Blondes have been pushed way down. So like that whole you're number one, we're number two, we want to beat you to get a tag title shot is gone. That story has been killed. I suspect they will actually come back to it when they bring Acclaim back because they never forget anything. They just postpone things like they're doing with Hangman right now. But yeah, so that's what's happening. But like the other stuff, the other guys who were there on in the tag side who are permanently tag stuff, like Top Flight still on ice while Darius is still healing up. Bear Country finally came back. So happy to see Bear Country come back. But
they're on Dark this week, right?
They were on Dark. They were on Dark this week.
Chaos Project, that's right.
Yeah, Chaos Project is where they need to be. Chaos Project is like the hybrid 2. They will come on to Dynamite when they need to.
Probably easier to throw around, but especially Japan.
I don't know. Angelico looks really slight. I bet he's probably pretty easy to throw around.
I don't know, but Sorrento's used to getting.
They'll be on Dynamite. Yeah, no. They'll be on Dynamite when somebody needs to have their face pushed into a cake, and then they won't the rest of the time because there's no reason for them to be around the rest of the time. But that's all right. Yeah, Dark on the other hand was a good 2 hours of mostly squashes, but there were a handful of. I did really like that double slam that Bear Bronson did in their match. Got Luther up on his shoulders. That was quite something. And and this is where QT Marshall's going to be. He'll show up on Dynamite from time to time to continue to talk, but he's not going to have matches that often because he is a mid-card guy. He's in the exact same position that TH2 is. He's there to put over the baby faces on the way up and occasionally win to get heat. So he's going to get most of his ring time on Dark. But I thought he actually had a really fun match with Alan Angels. I really like that. I also like that they kept.
Yeah.
Well, I also like that they kept the.
That was funny about that match. I was gonna say that there was one thing funny about that match because like he went for Alan 5 Angels mask, right? Mm-hmm. Which I'm like, that's a heel thing to do against a luchador. And then I sat there for the rest of the match going, is Alan Angels actually a luchador? It's like
I feel
because I had that whole conceptual issue in my mind. Like, so does the mask make the luchador? Does the luchador make the mask? Like how does that work? So you like if you're not a luchador, it shouldn't matter to you, right?
Well, if you look at it, the masked guys in Dark Order have always operated under luchador rules. They keep their masks on all the time. They never take them off. You never see them without they're off. If you remember back to the like not even -1. If you remember back to the Brody Lee tribute episode when MJF ripped his mask off, he hid his face so that no one could see his face and tried to keep his head away from the camera. So it seems like they choose to operate under luchador rules as far as how their masks work.
Which is funny because it's not really a rule in AEW, right?
No, and they've mentioned it. They mentioned it a couple of times, like whenever, because that's like obviously something that gets used against the Lucha Brothers a lot. Excalibur will flat out say like, if this was lucha rules, it would be a disqualification to take off someone's mask.
Right.
But but here it's not, so you can do it and attempt to beat somebody. And they tried, but he, actually it eventually cost Alan Angels the match, but he got his mask back and put it back on and hit his face. I thought it was really fun. Lots of back and forth.
Oh, I like Vibe matches a lot. I like Alan Angels. I think he brings a good intensity to his matches, and he's a good moveset for being a small guy. Kind of like Stu Grayson, but not as good. Yeah.
Not quite. He might be a Stu Grayson one day. I also like that they and Stu Grayson had a hell of a week this week. I really want to talk about that during Dynamite.
Yeah. The Dark Order main event was Dark Order, like 2 matches, basically.
Yes. And the thing I really liked, but also the thing I really liked is that they have kept up the storyline for Dark Order. Because if you remember, last week, Dark Order came out to help Hangman. Stu Grayson and Evil Uno told him, no, Hangman doesn't want us, so we're going to respect his wishes. And they kept this up in BTE where they showed them yelling and fighting with each other because the group that wanted to help does not agree with Stu Grayson and Evil Uno, and they are basically not hanging out, not spending time together. Colt Cabana is trying to play peacemaker between them, so he might go back and forth between the different groups. And we saw that across all the shows. Like none of those groups, Evil Uno and Stu Grayson, were not with the rest of Dark Order when they came out for their matches, and the rest of Dark Order were not with Evil Uno and Stu Grayson when they came out for their championship match on Dynamite. So I like how they're keeping that up. They also had a great
they
yep.
If you don't watch BTE, like I didn't catch BTE this week, but the announcers did mention at one point that like there is some dissension because of who supports Hangman and who who wants to give him space, which seems like a really ridiculous.
Well, it's about what makes you a better friend, doing what you think you need to do to help them, or just respecting their wishes, and they're having a disagreement. And the only one who's going between the both is Colt Cabana, so you see him with both. And in fact, they had a sketch about that where Hangman, if you watched the promo last week when Hangman came in with his beer and told him he needed to go his own way, he left a DVD behind, and on BTE they actually found the DVD and watched it, and it was a montage video Hangman had put together of all their time together to tell them that he needed to go his own way for a bit, but they'd always be friends. It was just some kind of like bland, normal, like unremarkable music. But actually, the best part, the absolute best part of BTE, you want to talk about long-term callbacks, Brandon Cutler and Librarian Peter Avalon bumped into each other in the hallways. And obviously, Brandon Cutler is the cheater with the cold spray for the Bucks right now. And if you remember, a year and a half ago, before they finally had their timeout, Brandon and Peter were a tag team called the Initiative, and Peter always wanted to cheat, and Brandon never would. And like they bump into him, and Peter's like, "What is happening? I'm watching you on the show all the time, and now you're cheating all the time." And I tried to get you to get the Initiative, and you never would. And he's like, "Nope, you're totally right, Peter. I should have listened to you. Cheating is so much fun, and it always works, and there are no negative repercussions. And you were right. You should have done it, and now it's great." And Peter's like, "Well, finally, you listened to me." And then Peter's like, "Maybe we should get the Initiative back together." He's like, "No, I'm with the Bucks, and I'm on TV every week, and you're on Dark every week, so I'm good with what I'm doing." It was hilarious. It was great that they were.
Putting color in the women would be kind of funny.
Well, it feels like, and we're going to get to this too, sooner rather than later, this whole Elite thing has to blow up. Brandon has to get some sort of blame for that. And I feel like he's the one who's going to get cast out for a while. So having him get stuck with I could see him getting stuck with the Wingmen, but I could also see him going to the Wingmen for a place when he has nowhere else to go, and Peter being like, "You had your chance and you were snooty about it, so you're off on your own." So we'll see.
JD Drake. You can take Brandon Cutler. I mean, what's the criteria here?
I know. Also, I forgot to mention this through the revolving Forbidden Door is that Frankie Kazarian has been showing up regularly on Impact now. He has followed the Good Brothers to as the Elite Hunter. In fact, they had a really, really good 6-man tag: Frankie Kazarian, Eddie Edwards, and Sami Callihan against Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers, and they won. They pinned Carl Anderson. It was a really good main event.
You should have like a dog to bounce show type like video segment for like Frankie Kazarian every week where he goes and like tries to hunt the Elite. Like completely.
I'm trying to think if there was anything else really interesting in Dark before we move on to Dynamite. Hikuleo had a match on Dark, which I can't say much more than the fact that Hikuleo had one because he lives in LA, and the show that the AEW show he was on was in Dallas, Texas. So it's not like he was just in town and they decided to give him a match. They flew him all the way out to Florida to Jacksonville to have a match. So I'm wondering if they're thinking they want to do more stuff with him. He's still regular.
Do you think he's going to support them for a little?
I don't know. He's still on He was on Resurgence. He had a match on the NJPW pay-per-view. He is doing regular matches on their Friday show, NJPW Strong, but I don't know. Anything's possible. There were also, I almost forgot to mention, there were Impact guys on that New Japan show as well. Moose came from Impact, who's really good, came from Impact and had a match on that show as well. So lots of stuff. And the other one I'd point out was, though it was short, for just important reason, Moose has been all over the place. He had a great match with Kenny Omega, and I know he's recently I know he's recently re-signed with Impact, but he should be in either AEW and WWE, and really should be in AEW because he's the kind of guy who could make it in WWE, but WWE is just
Did
mostly
they book him
awful
like
right now.
the death or something like that?
Yeah, well, he's like, you're talking about somebody who's like 6'4" and 250 pounds. So he is exactly the kind
he
of
would
guy.
be booked well.
He would be booked well. He's the one of those handful of guys who would get booked well in WWE and could actually make it through that system. But it still would be a terrible show. So, I wouldn't want to wish that on him. But he could thrive there. But Daniel Garcia and Fuego del Sol, who both had really big TV matches this week, had a nice little face off on Dark as well. Oh, you know what? I almost totally forgot about it. We've never seen this on Dynamite, which I can't understand why, but Shawn Spears and Wardlow have been a tag team on Dark for the last several weeks. And they had a match this week where Shawn Spears looked really good against Ripper Zbyszko, the son of Larry Zbyszko.
What a great wrestling name. Ripper Zbyszko is a very great wrestling game. The whole time I kept thinking, I'm like, Zbyszko. Where have I heard that before? I was like, it's not Nabisco. That's the biscuit people.
That's something else. That's the biscuit.
No, it's Larry Zbyszko, right? Very Bruno Sammartino's longtime rival, right? From back in the day.
That's right.
Like 10 years.
And then after that, they held like their Shea Stadium match was for a long time the most watched wrestling match ever in North America. I think it finally got beat by like Hulk Hogan and Paul Orndorff, but it was for a long time. And then after that, he was an announcer. He was like one of the primary commentators on WCW during the Attitude Era, during the height of Nitro. He was like one of the big guys on that. But yeah, Ripper Zbyszko, and they're from a long wrestling family because Larry Zbyszko's father was like a major wrestler in the 50s. So that's like he's like a third generation. So hopefully they do something with him. Oh, and as often happens, even though Private Party and Best Friends have been continuing to feud on the TV, but they've continued that feud into Dark as well. And there was a really nice Chuck Taylor and Wheeler match against Private Party.
So Trent actually has spinal surgery, from what I understand.
That's right.
And I still wish, and I don't know why they haven't done it, just do some type of interaction video segment with Wheeler Yuta and the rest of Best Friends to explain why he's out there with them all the time, rather than
they keep saying that he is. They keep saying that he is like Chuck's protege. Excalibur has said that several times, but you might miss it. They do some great bits on BTE where they have had them like all the Best Friends in a hotel room watching back video from the segments, and Chuck Taylor is trying to give Wheeler Yuta's got like this laptop that he's furiously typing on while Chuck Taylor is trying to tell him what he did right and what he did wrong, while frequently getting like both the names of all the participants, like what the moves are,
or even Dark,
and what the rules of wrestling are completely wrong. And Statlander's really mean to Yuta, and Orange Cassidy's really bored. It's hilarious. It's like she wouldn't let him eat till he'd won, and he keeps going, I have won matches, and she's like slaps his food away. And if you ever see I'm starting to see like a lot of signs in the crowd now, like Darby hit him with the coffin flop. That is directly from those bits, because that's what Chuck Taylor keeps calling the move the coffin flop. And Yuta keeps correcting him, and he was like, no, it's the coffin drops. Like, that's what I said, the coffin flop.
Yeah, I'm just saying, just take away 1 or 2 minutes from even. It could be Elevation or Dark, but they haven't done it on any of those shows. Just show the crowd like why you should care that he's a part of them.
It's so goofy. Funny. It's so goofy. I know they won't put it on TV, but they could use it. But that's why you got to watch. Just like you got to watch Dark, you got to watch BTE. You got to tie all this stuff together. So that was like the best stuff on Dark. There was, a lot of like squash stuff, but a lot of it's getting us ready for Dynamite and Rampage. And it felt like even a lot of Dynamite was getting us really ready for the first episode of Rampage this week. But there was some big stuff. A lot of people looking at the cards, you might not think it was a big show, but there was some big stuff in it.
Because the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega fought Dante Martin and the fucking Seidels or something.
This was great. No, the Seidels are I know you hate them, but the Seidels are a good fit for Dante Martin. They fit that style and they can do all that stuff and their experience.
Good thing they had this match, but they had the common decency to get their shit out the first half of the match and let Dante Martin take over the last second of it.
Well, that was what the entire point of the match was.
And
Well, you
Dante
could,
Martin,
yeah,
star in the making. I mean, when you saw,
yeah.
especially his offensive sequence at the end of that match, I thought was amazing. They didn't end up winning, of
No.
course.
That, I mean, that
But
was
I
what
mean,
the
Dante Martin, I
entire,
thought was a star.
yeah. No, I mean, like this entire match is about making Dante Martin a star. And that's what
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the Elite was out there, the Young Bucks and Kenny went there too, but that's also what the Seidel's were out there too. And that's why they put him with the Seidel's, not just to get their stuff out of the way, but they're there in case he gets lost because they're really experienced. So in case he gets lost or something weird happens, they didn't have to, but they, because he looked really good out there. They could have gotten him pointed back in the right direction and make sure that and cover up for anything goofy that goes wrong. They're like a slightly higher level version of what 2.0 or TH2. They've had a lot of ring time, a lot of TV time. They can do that.
Who we saw on this week on like Dark, who's another one of the Indian wrestlers who doesn't get that much time, but he actually had an Om symbol on his trunks and everything. And I'm like, but that works because he's actually Hindu and Indian. And so like, when Matt Sydal goes out there, I'm like, God damn it. I'm like, and you know what? With my luck, they're gonna pair them up with him. And I'm like, oh,
maybe
this is gonna like, oh,
that's what the Seidels are there for. You know what? Whenever because he was actually on Dynamite for the first time, although he just walking around the background, but he was on Dynamite this week. I noticed.
Oh, Arjun Singh. Okay.
Yeah, but whenever he breaks free and it needs to get pushed up to the next level and needs like some experienced hands, that is what the Seidels are there to do. So I wouldn't be like super surprised.
But yeah, no, but it was I thought it was
the last match. Yeah.
Don't say like I was about. I mean, it was such a showcase match for him.
The last maybe like 5 minutes or so of this, because this went long. This went through a commercial break. The last maybe like 5 minutes or so of this with this him and Kenny was out of this world. All of the reversals on the one winged angel attempts.
He reversed winged angel so many times. We hardly ever see anyone do that.
Almost never. That was great. And then they had to, they had to kill him to keep him down. So they made him go out strong, and it was it
kind of sucks that he ate the pin instead of one of the Seidels.
Usually it would be Mike. I mean, that's if we're honest, that's basically what Mike is there for. Mike is there to eat the pin. So I guess they want to keep you on your toes just a little bit, but also some of that I think is from some of that New Japan strong style that they do incorporate a little bit of. Is like you eat the pin, you eat the pin, you eat the pin up until you've gotten stronger than the guys you've been wrestling, and then you're beating them.
And honestly, on the 3-on-3, it doesn't matter as much who eats the pin. Right. I mean,
and also part of this was a setup for Rampage and All Out, because at the end of it, who should come out but Christian Cage to a really bad reception. The crowd did not want to see Christian Cage come out, where he announced that he was going to be challenging. Kenny Omega. There were CM Punk chants and yes chants. Like when he said he was going to be the main event guy at All Out challenging for the AEW Championship, people were like, "I don't give a shit." Like that entire crowd did not give.
I was a little surprised. Honestly. I thought they would just have like the match that they ended up having, which was the Impact match. I thought would have been the AEW title match.
I would have thought so too, and I suspect that may have been the original plan at one point, and they've had to switch that. Like, and I definitely want to talk about that when we get to Rampage, because as bad as this reception was, they managed to turn that completely around, which is a real thing, and it speaks a lot to Christian's experience as well. But no one cared that he was, and some people were actively hostile to the. I mean, Don Callis had to work really hard to kind of get that crowd back onto him, and it helped that Jurassic Express was coming out at the end. But I think there were some people who were not at all caring about what that Rampage title match was going to be, because of course at the end of this, as a nice little swerve, Christian announces that before the All Out main event, he's going to be challenging Kenny Omega on the first episode of Rampage for the Impact World Championship title.
So two AEW wrestlers fought each other for the Impact title on an AEW main event. So yes. Which again is why I'm like Impact vision of AEW.
It's the forbidden door. Well, at least Christian has been an Impact champion before.
That's true. Yeah.
And in fact, that's right. So we'll definitely get to that, because there was quite a lot to say about what that Impact title match was like on Rampage. But the main thing I got from it was that Christian Cage and Kenny Omega, they really turned it around. But
They also set up the Jurassic Express versus Young Bucks right here
next week. That's Texas. Right, in Houston, Texas, for the tag team championship. And they've had that match before, but it was really good. And they've all gotten better, especially Luchasaurus. And they had a fantastic sketch where the Young Bucks were attempting their trick shots and
thank God,
Luchasaurus.
They do. I'm actually a huge basketball fan. It's like, why does it have to be their thing? Like, come on. So at least they came in, like, dunked on him, and I'm like,
Luchasaurus, he blocked the post up and knocked him to the ground, gave him the Dikembe Mutombo finger wag, and then it was a great ending.
Playing that, hey, there used to be a center that blocked shots and used to go like this, because that was like 20 years ago now, dude.
And now you have to explain what he was doing. But even better, when they're leaving, and Nick, well, now everybody knows because of those Geico commercials. But then even after that, and then they're calling foul, and Cutler's like, nope, it was all ball, and they're like, shut up, Brandon, shut up, Cutler. That was even better. That entire segment was hilarious.
It was better than fucking like shooting around a hoop by themselves. So if you're gonna do that segment, I prefer.
At least that last one they did with all the trick shots, and they did that with no cuts.
And would be with douchebags. That's kind of what they're doing. It's like, no, it's not just a douchebag sport. What the hell? That's not
Wait, what? Basketball's not just a douchebag sport? Are you sure? I've never heard. What? I don't know what you're talking about. Isn't there a world champion who writes down the name of everyone who said anything ever bad against him on the heels of his show?
All Kevin Durant. Is the biggest douchebag I think of. It's Kevin Durant in basketball. It's not like a team full of Kevin Durant.
Are you sure?
League full of Kevin.
Okay, there's not a league. There's not a.
Burner accounts because of your fragile league.
There's not a league of Kevin Durants. I will agree with that. There's not a. I'm pretty sure there's probably at least a team of Kevin Durants.
Maybe.
Probably more than one.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, and so we had that come up, and then we had the Malachi Black video segment where he talked to his mask. And I mean, because we didn't have the show last week, so let's just sum it up real quick. Malachi Black took care of that ass and just
Malachi Black destroyed Cody Rhodes.
Yeah,
that went maybe like 3 minutes.
People, he had a beautiful leg sweep in that whole match, and I was like, man, like this guy's. I mean,
he had a crazy good leg sweep.
The aura and everything he has about him is just so like I can't wait to see more of him.
Well, and so apparently, the best thing about that was when after he gets the black mask and he goes whatever they're going to end up calling it because they can't call it that, but it's the black mask. He did the spinning kick to the temple, and he goes and he just stands and puts 1 foot over Kenny, and you hear JR.
Oh say,
that's not gonna. Yeah, JR goes that's not gonna do it, and then instead it's like 1, 2, 3. And JR's like, holy shit, I can't believe it. He beat the crap out of Cody, and then he came back out and beat him up some more with a crutch. So
right, because Cody started teasing, started crying, and taking boots and putting him in the ring, and then he only got 1 boot off before he came over and laid him out with the crutch. So apparently what they're doing is pulling this off, I'm assuming, until All Out or something like that.
I don't know. Cody. I'd be willing to bet it's after All Out. It's like last time. So the last time Cody did this, when he got destroyed by Brody Lee, he was gone until October before he came back and had that great dog collar match with Brody Lee. So I would not expect to see him at All Out.
Here in front of people in the meantime, so that I'm assuming that Cody's friends he's going to start going after, like the Nightmare Family. Like
that's the question.
Maybe just Dustin feud or some shit. Probably
they didn't have.
That sounds like.
Yeah, it could be, or Lee Johnson or something. But you think that they'd want something bigger than that? Because I guess Dustin's about the right level, because he didn't have anyone. He mentioned this promo was very generic. Talked about getting rid of Cody and launching the House of Black, which is great. But someone with that level of push, who has been given that level of rocket ship, you figure has to have a match on All Out.
I guess. So here's another thing. You said he's so bigger. Yeah. And he just said it. He said a phrase. I mean, with the booking the way it is, it doesn't make sense. But it made me just, this positive thing, because he said, "Oh, you're arguing with God," and I was like, "Oh, who's a big God guy? Miro."
Yeah. It could be a good match. I would say that could be a good match. The thing is, I wouldn't want to beat Malachi Black right now with as good as things are going for him. But it is too early to beat Miro somebody. You need a face
super
to beat
fan
Mira.
but it's just,
So
this game,
no, I had that same thought, and I was like, no, that would be a bad idea. So they need to find like a really good baby face. Dustin's not a bad idea, actually. They need a really good baby face that he can beat at All Out is what they need. But so that will be interesting. You had, Daniel Garcia got his rematch against Darby Allin, which in a short match, but I thought was a really good one. They're trying hard. They're trying out Daniel Garcia hard. They've given him.
It had 2 commercials. You thought it was a short match?
And on top,
long.
I don't know. It felt short, but maybe I focus more on the aftermath at the end when 2.0, who's been on the ring with them to support him, gets into it with Sting and gets beaten up single-handedly by Sting. But from that, they did announce next week here in Houston, Texas, or this week now here in Houston, Texas, a Texas Tornado match, Sting and Darby Allin versus 2.0. So we are going to get to see.
First, I didn't ask for this. That's just what that match.
You know what I did? Just we are going to see firsthand Sting's first wrestling match on television in a ring in 20 years. But more importantly than that, I was thinking, like, does it really need to be? He just beat up both of these guys single-handedly with like no help from anyone. Does it really need to be a tag team? Where is the challenge? I mean, they're just going to go in there and get beat up. But that's all right, because I find 2.0 immensely.
At least I want to see them get beat up. So I got something that they got that going for them.
They got that going for them.
But that's what they do. I didn't like them as faces, but I want to see them get beat up as heels. So there you go. Yep. Their type of shit. And I guess Pac and Lucha Brothers are still keeping that on, the surface, and they announced that the Pac Friday thing is going to happen. They had a back and forth video segments here where Pac talked about, "Hey, you're not going to break us up because we're still going to be there. You know where to find me." And then Chavo was talking to Andrade, and he's like, "Hey, well, maybe we should just do the match then." I was like, "Finally, this is all we've been all waiting for."
Well, that's what we expected.
Shenanigans happening. At least Lucha Brothers have to be involved with the match at some point at the pay-per-view. And so I'm expecting them to go against Pac at some point, but
maybe. But the way he was talking, he was saying they needed to stay focused on gold and getting the tag team championships. So do they instead face the Young Bucks for the tag team championships at All Out? Because the Young Bucks right now have no match at All Out. We have to assume they will have one. It's not going to be Jurassic Express. But who's it going to be?
You don't think we'll get title change next week?
I don't think so.
That'd be cool.
No. It would be cool, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think we'll just have to live without that. But it'll be a good match. So I would not be surprised. It's about time, it's just about time for Lucha Brothers. Like the only tag, because there was a really good FTR and Santana and Ortiz promo segment.
Right.
And it seems like they're keeping that alive, probably for All Out. I think they're hoping that Cash Wheeler is healed up enough that they can run that match back at All Out. But that's not a tag team title match. They always have a tag team title match at the pay-per-views. So the Young Bucks really need, and it's not going to be Dark Order because Dark Order is not getting their shot. So the Young Bucks, that once upon a time, I thought it was going to be like Hangman versus Omega and the Dark Order versus Young Bucks at the pay-per-view.
Right.
But it's not going to be that. So Lucha Brother, and somehow in some strange way, Lucha Brothers are something like baby faces because they are. The Young Bucks are worse heels, and the Lucha Brothers are spending all their time fighting off worse heels. I mean, Andrade is clearly some level of worse heel. So could be the Lucha Brothers against maybe that's the title change we see it All Out. Because if Hangman, if Christian maybe. Well, I think
life is a video game. You can't just put these people in things.
No. Well, everyone seems to think, and they're probably right, that CM Punk is going to have a singles match with Darby Allin at All Out, and everyone also seems to think, and they're probably right, that Bryan Danielson's debut is being held off for the Big Giant Queens Stadium show, which is after All Out.
So, that Archer Stadium one?
Mm-hmm. So he may not be at All Out at all. I wouldn't expect that.
Yeah, I was expecting, because we just haven't heard any traction on that. We're CM Punk. I mean, even on the show, they keep talking about it all the time, right? Yeah. So as you mentioned earlier, it's like at this point we don't have CM Punk, because CM Punk off screen has been talking about he said he's not going to be there, but
he's just going to he said he's going to happen to be in Chicago. That same time, showing off a screening of the 3rd episode of Heels that he guest stars in, like
right on Stars, right?
On Stars with Stephen Amell, who's a good friend of Cody's, and I think Cody's actually in an episode of that show. But and it's like partially based off of his life. But yeah, CM Punk is showing up on Rampage next week.
Right.
Everyone on Earth knows it.
He announced that or whenever he said anything, the ticket rates went up so much, and I'm like, you can't say that shit and then have him not come on, because then you're just that much of an asshole.
No one would ever. It would kill the promotion. It probably wouldn't kill it dead, but no one will ever trust them again. No one will ever trust a single. It would be like Vince McMahon has lied about a lot of stuff. They will shamelessly promote matches that aren't going to happen, but he's never lied about anything this big. And
right. Like don't have CP or something.
They could say they're technically not lying because they've never actually mentioned CM Punk's name, and it is true they have never actually mentioned CM Punk's name. But no, you can't. You can't. You know, they could get away with
like that.
Yeah, no, it's like when Christian Cage came out at Double or Nothing, and people were Revolution, whatever it was, and people were like, yeah, but it was you guys who put CM Punk's name out there, not us, and that was true. That is not true in this case.
All the hinting they're doing, and then not even the hinting, they're replaying it as a video package
all the time.
So it's like it's part of their marketing.
Yeah, like Tony Khan's out there doing interviews. He's like, I can't answer any of your questions, but you know, we all know what's gonna. He's literally said what's going to. He's literally said what's going to happen at First Dance is what you think's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, it is better. Or there will be a riot at the United Center. If he's not, there will be a literal riot. I mean, people will set that building on fire.
It would be bad. Like if CM Punk doesn't show up, we riot. Like that's like if John Cena wins, we riot. That type of shit.
Right. Mm-hmm. You are gonna get thrown out of that Dynamite show, and I'm gonna have to tell you how it is. And you don't want to do that, because the end of next week, if we want to jump to it, it is very clear now the main event of the Houston show is going to be MJF versus Jericho, and that's a hell of a main event.
With that, and then Ricky Starks and Brian Cage too, but I'm also definitely looking forward to seeing MJF wrestle, because we don't get to see that.
Because we don't get to see it.
We haven't aimed on that wheel where it just stopped right there, where it's like, all right, we're on Houston. So
that's right. So it worked out. I don't know what they originally had planned for the original Houston show, but I'll take this. And we just talked about how in Dark there was a Hardy Family Office versus Best Friends to keep that going, and then brought that right back into TV. They're keeping it going everywhere. It's on Dark, it's on TV.
I like that match. Orange Cassidy did so many good bits in this. He did with the bit with Matt Hardy, putting Matt Hardy's pants in.
That was great. Stopping the delete. He stopped the delete. That was great. I really liked that.
Really good in the corner, he did a lot of really good stuff here that I really like. It was like vintage Cassidy, and we've seen a lot of that started touring again, because before they started touring a while, his matches were kind of like, just do like the Slumdog Millionaire and punch and that's it. Not much of the funny shit. But now ever since he's interjecting that creativity back into his matches, which I like.
Well, I feel like they're trying to take all the over that he is and rub it off on everyone else. Some of it's Yuta, but a lot of it's because Chris Statlander was out here with this, and then he was out again with her in her match. And I feel like in particular, they want to keep him up hot because they need him to be, but they also are trying to use him to get Statlander more over. I can't tell if it's working, because it still sounds like crowds are kind of cold for her matches. I don't think too bad, because I really like her matches, and her promos have gotten a lot better, but I guess they just need to keep working on it.
Oh, and also one thing with Statlander, it's funny because recently, I've gotten into this whole thing where I've been watching these shows about aliens, comedies about aliens. I started watching People of Earth, which was travesty. The third season never got renewed and then canceled, because that was a good. And then I started Resident Alien, the Alan Tudyk show, which also was very good. But now I'm kind of like, oh, so that's what Chris Statlander's going for. Okay,
you got it now. You got the idea. Well,
Alien Among Us type of shit. Okay, all right.
Especially once they put her with Best Friends, she's less serious and more goofy about it, and it works.
Right, and even the makeup's Barbara Killian or whatever. Okay, that's cool. I get it.
And she had what I thought was a really good match with Nyla Rose. I mean, there was some clunkiness early on, but the end of it was good.
she picked her up and everything.
Yeah, which was really tough. But she got out of the hanging knees bit by handstand walking off the ropes, but then just walked into a spear. I thought that whole bit was really good. I don't know if anybody remembers, because it's a couple of years now, but she was the first challenger to Nyla Rose when Nyla Rose held the belt, and they actually had a pay-per-view match at Revolution, which was not very good. It was, a whole lot of it had the misfortune of
both of them are better now, though.
Yeah, they're both better. Well, they had the misfortune of following the Bucks Hangman Kenny match.
Yeah, like
but
best match ever yet. Yeah. So on
exactly, and then at the same time, their match was really ambitious, and probably more ambitious than they were capable of at that point. And this was a TV match, so it was not like that crazy ambitious, but they were much better with everything that they were attempting to do here than they were that last. This was a much better version of the Statlander Nyla Rose match, and they put Chris Statlander over Nyla Rose, which shows
because that Party Family Office pinned Utah on the other.
That's right.
So I don't think feud's ending anytime soon.
No, that's going to keep going for a while until we have some sort of blow off. It seems like the blow off, if you base it off, it's either another Arcade Anarchy street fight type of thing where it's both big groups against each other, or it comes down to Matt Hardy versus Orange Cassidy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, those are the only two big matches. Yeah, that could be a really good pay-per-view match. And Cassidy doesn't have a pay-per-view match right now, so it's possible. But it also seems like they're getting Chris Statlander ready for Chris Statlander versus Britt Baker for All Out. And
although I gotta say, man, Britt Baker and like the whole Red Velvet thing this whole week, like with other promos, because they also had a video segment on Dynamite before their Rampage match. Yeah, and it felt like they're in Canada, like the whole thing where like Red Velvet was. Red Velvet was actually with the shit she was saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they had to be.
There wasn't also the crowd was Britt Baker at all. They were not going to boo that girl up.
No, like this is her hometown.
Solidly behind.
Yeah. She came out to a hero's welcome to being yelled at. She was probably applauded more than anyone else on that show. And this is a show that had Darby Allin and Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks on it. And she came out to a bigger pop than anyone. No, Red Velvet was not going to.
No, Hangman. That could have been.
Yeah. But that would be the only one that maybe would have been. And Sting was on the show, and she got a bigger pop than he did. She came out hero's welcome, and Red Velvet was booed. I mean, Red Velvet's the baby face, and she was roundly booed, and she was booed on Rampage too. And,
I mean,
there's nothing to be done there. But they, nice little setup for the main event of Rampage, which will be for a women's world title match. So they're not shying away from keeping the women's world title matches in the main event scene when they need to. That was really interesting.
But I guess the next match they had after all that was basically the Impact Tag Team title match, right?
You forget. You was it? And I can't remember if it was before this or after that. I guess it was right after that, because they had my boy QT Marshall. This is actually one of my favorite bits of the show. My boy QT Marshall.
Before that was after.
Okay, so we had. All right, so first we did the Impact Tag Team Championships between Dark Order and the Good Brothers. Well, they've had the Impact Tag Team Championships have been on on Dynamite like every week since January, but I mean for 8 months by now. So it's about time they defend those titles on Dynamite. I mean, they should. They've defended them on Impact a couple times because Private Party went to Impact.
Scott D'Amore was on commentary.
Yeah, Scott D'Amore was on commentary. Yeah, they brought him out then to talk about to comment on the match and to talk about the world title match. You know what? Impact needs to get something out of this. They're getting some ratings. They're getting some really good pay-per-view buys.
Better views or buy rates, because it seems like a lot of work is putting into promoting Impact right now. So I hope that something comes out.
The views seem to go up and down, but the buy rates are definitely better. The match, the pay-per-view where Kenny Omega won the Impact title is like their most watched pay-per-view in something like 15 years. It's like the last one, the only one that ever seems to have beat that was like a Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe main event. Like it was like a long time ago with a giant main event. So, and Apparently, Slammiversary's buy rate was really, really, really good too. So like their main
Okay.
pay-per-views with Kenny, they've been getting stuff out of it, especially considering.
Well, that explains why they keep doing it then. So yeah.
Well, especially considering like the hole that Impact has had to dig it out of, because they sound, from what I have heard, it sounds like they've got really, really close to just going out forever somewhere over like the last 3 years.
Oh wow.
So and they've been in a deep hole without very much talent, with nobody watching the product. So this has really helped them in a big way. Hopefully it will continue to help them.
Kickstarter bad. Yeah.
It was pretty bad. But I thought this match was good. I mean, the Good Brothers are good wrestlers when they get down to it, and Evil Uno and Stu Grayson are criminally
At least Kaz came over and took care of Brandon Cutler, so that's good.
Yeah, you would think as the Elite Hunter he would be like going and beating up. I know they didn't want to interfere with the match, but he should be going out and beating up one of the Good Brothers, not
right. It's like we took out Cutler.
Like
okay,
it makes you seem. Yeah. It makes you seem weak as the Elite Hunter, where you're like specifically targeting the easiest guy to beat up. And that was after Colt Cabana, who is the only, like we said, he's the only member of Dark Order who comes out with both groups. So he was the only one who came out with them, and he was on ringside, and he cracked Brandon Cutler right in the face, right in his little face mask, and sent him running away. So like Kaz even got wounded Brandon Cutler.
It's like basically Kaz, you did nothing. He just
did nothing. No, all the real stuff was happening in the
Good Brothers ended up winning through shenanigans, of course, with title belts and all that.
So. Well, they're not going to change. They're not going to change especially with what else is happening this week. They're not going to change the tag
well, I mean, especially don't see the Dark Order like getting the Impact.
No.
That's like, I mean, super weird. Like,
if they gave it to, I could. If they gave it to Finjuice, if they gave it to Finjuice, I could see them giving it to Dark Order. And Dark Order should get these somebody's belts at some point, because, like I said, they play so goofy most of the time. Everyone forgets how good they are in the ring. Stu Grayson was crazy. He got Doc Gallows up on his shoulders, trying to give him the fatality, the Nightfall for a split second.
But like that guy's huge.
I had no doubt though. Like, yeah, they dropped him for the story. I had no doubt if he was trying to give him the Nightfall, he would have been able to give him the Nightfall. Which, if nobody's ever seen it, he gets a guy up on his shoulders, sweeps him around on his neck like a pendulum into a backbreaker. It's really hard to do.
Even got in a get over here with one of the
they did.
Games fans, so I love all the references.
Well, you know, like that's what their gimmick before Dark Order was the Super Smash Brothers with the remote control.
Nintendo said stop. So
yes, so they had to come up with a new gimmick for AEW, and thus the Dark Order was born. Thank you, Nintendo. Nintendo, that's right. Nintendo is responsible for the Dark Order.
Fuck you, Nintendo. Except for lick my Switch, don't take my Switch away from me. But yeah, Nintendo.
Yeah, like Stu Grayson needs like a run with the TNT title or something. And like, you're just gonna have
love it. Yeah,
great matches from him.
That's watching that guy wrestle. I mean, he's just so good. And like I said, and he's not a big guy, but you would think he would be. He wrestles.
He works like a big guy.
He wrestles like 100 times bigger than he actually is.
Yeah, for sure. So this was really fun, and then it actually followed.
We'll get to your favorite segment of the whole thing. The QT.
One of my favorite segments. I didn't laugh quite as hard as at the basketball segment, but I did laugh really hard and did rewind it because QT comes out to give his long-awaited, much delayed apology to Tony Schiavone for pouring the protein shake on him, only to reveal that he is in fact still just a heel asshole, and says, no, everyone should be apologizing to me. And they pull out Tony Schiavone's, they said was Tony Schiavone's son, and I believe he's Tony Schiavone's son, but honest to God,
boy,
he looked, I thought he was going to be a little boy too. This guy, now I know Tony is in his 60s, but he's like super well preserved. His son looks older than he is.
That's like, it didn't work for that, what they're doing.
And it kept saying son, like maybe they should have made the I know. Well, I know he's like a grandfather or something, but he's got like 100 kids. There has to be, is this the youngest one? I don't know. Or they should have made him shave off the giant beard to make him look a little younger. Because I was like, this looks like a 50-year-old man you pulled out of the crowd. I don't have as much sympathy. He may be his son, but he's not like his helpless son. I don't have like a huge amount of sympathy. He looked older than Tony.
Did they miss up who the plant was?
I know. I expected him to like pull like some 12-year-old out, not.
Or maybe Tony's son, like that guy came up, he's like, "Hey man, I'll give you $500 if you let me stand in your spot." Tony's son's like, "Whatever, mister, here you go."
And the Good Brothers don't know what
We'll do it
Tony's.
fine.
The Good Brothers don't know what, or QT doesn't know what Tony's son looks like. He's like, "This is the spot he's supposed to be in. Grab him." And he's in there going, "What the hell is going on?"
Oh, this grown ass dude with a beard and a punch. Like,
What? Man, what? He's like, Nick Comoroto's gonna hit you. He's gonna what? Maybe he was potatoing him for real. It was a shoot.
Like Mass Effect, but not as bad. Like, okay.
But and then in the middle of this, you get basically the AEW version of "It's the Big Show."
Yeah,
it sounded exactly like the Big Show music. They just didn't use any of the Big Show music lyrics, so they couldn't get sued.
The program.
It sounded like it sounded. No, it sounded like they went to Mikey Ruckus is the guy who writes all their entrance themes. It's like they went to Mikey Ruckus and they played the "It's the Big Show" music for him and said, "Make it sound like that." That's what it sounded like.
The Conan used to do, where like it's the right words but the wrong like tune to keep it away from copyright people, like that type of thing. Like just do the opposite chord.
I didn't even notice if it had words. All I heard was like do 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 do.
Like it didn't have that harmonic.
Yeah, I mean it sounded so close to it. Like that's all I could notice.
Paul White, I'd like to see him just beat the shit out of QT. I mean,
that's what he should be doing. Like he doesn't get to do TV commercial, but that's what QT's here for. He's here to get the shit beat out of him at the right time. And that's why that's the fact that you deride him so much means he's doing his job correctly, because you would be happy when someone beats him up. And Paul White, this is what they need him to do, because he's doing his commentary stuff. Okay, same with Mark Henry.
He did nothing for the QT Cody feud was bad. Come on, I mean that whole thing. You can't be like, "Oh, I just don't like."
He's all right.
Heel girl. No, it's like he's not even that great of a heel sometimes. So
it was all right. I liked it. I liked it a lot when it started, and then it went on for a while. And then the Anthony Gogo match wasn't great. It wasn't awful. It wasn't great, but it wasn't due to Anthony's surgery. It wasn't allowed to have its.
I'm just like, why is
it sounds like he's coming back?
Watching this guy's from every guy's match from there's ring steps. Like on the side of the match. Is he late to pick them up? Like, is he their Uber driver? Like, what happened?
No, he's their bowling shirt wearing godfather or something like that. Yeah. But then he left Aaron Solo high and dry. He skedaddled immediately. Poor Aaron Solo got picked up. I guess we have to
see the payoff.
Choke slammed to hell. Now, do we think Paul White's going to have a match with Nick Comoroto on Dynamite before the QT Marshall match? Or do you think they're just going to save it for the pay-per-view?
I mean, why not? Paul White matches are not going to be long matches, man. They're going to be.
They don't need to be. They shouldn't be. They can't be, and they don't need to be.
I think
all you need them to do is come in, do like the big chop and the big choke slam. That's all he needs to do. Exactly. It's a giant.
Maybe working punch or some shit like he did.
And he doesn't need to do it often. He can just need 4 times a year on each pay-per-view. Have him come in, beat the living piss out of somebody. Everyone will love it. Just QT. Every quarterly he beats up QT.
The quarterly QT beatdown.
Well, I know you would like that.
You know what? Chart QT last year this year.
You know what? I laughed at that whole bit. You know, I was really looking forward to this labor, but I felt like this was actually the least impressive of all the labors. I don't know what it was.
I have a bunch of notes on this, but
I love Wardlow matches.
The match was a little underwhelming.
It was.
Yeah, that's my last thing that I said. You know,
and this includes a Sean Spears chair match where Jericho, and I like Sean Spears a lot, but Jericho was working a lot of magic in that match to make it really interesting. And the Hoovy match, which was all over the place. When it was really good, it was really good, and when it was really bad, it was really bad.
It was just a spot thing. Like everybody just did their spots, and there wasn't like the Hoovy was trying to act like a face the whole time, which didn't even fucking. The whole thing.
Well, it had to be, in a certain extent, it had to be because you could only win with a move off the top rope, which meant like every finish had to be a high spot. And
you're right.
Yeah, at least it was goofy.
But it was still that he did better from the top rope. Like,
exactly. Whereas this
match, so okay.
This was, I mean, some of it was like his belt broke, and then and Wardlow couldn't get him up.
And we
Like,
all
they
knew
would-
it's not like he's going to labor, dude. We knew the
Right.
whole thing's going to set up the death match, right?
Right.
So it's I found it with those outcomes, it's like at least make it kind of entertaining. I just didn't
Yeah.
feel like it was as if
No, I mean, it was like they let him take the heat a lot, but it was also, it was like he was just getting power bomb after power bomb after power bomb after power. Like, find some other things to do or something. You can do more than
Jericho
that.
didn't get offense in at all, which I guess he wasn't supposed to,
No.
but they even kind of made that ring this time. So,
But then, I mean, I know they wanted to keep Wardlow strong. So then MJF comes in with the ring, gets caught, gets thrown out. And while he's being thrown out, Chris Jericho, the babyface, cheats by hitting Wardlow with the bat before
Right.
giving him the Judas effect. Just give him the Judas effect. Sell the finish. Let him know that
right.
this
If
is
it's
this is a
protected move, what's the point? I didn't even think
Yeah.
about that, but you're right. If it's such a protected move, what's the point of the back?
right. If it can beat anybody, let it beat anybody. He just needs to
Right.
be distracted by
I
what
even-
MJF is doing.
Right. They booked that weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was weird. It was a weird thing. I know, like, I get why they did the finish the way they did it, especially with the setup at the front. Because we forgot to mention the whole show starts with an MJF Wardlow promo where he basically tells MJF, "Don't screw up like you did with Cody. I don't
that
want
whole
this to
thing
go
that
through."
they did like a long time ago. What you said, like AEW never forgets, right? So
Never forgets. Well,
you plant that seed. This is still growing.
everyone thinks, and everyone's pretty sure that at some point Wardlow is going to leave MJF because
Right.
MJF's such a douche and is eventually going to beat him up and become a babyface. And it's
I
going to
wonder
be
if
like
we're going to see
Brian
more of
Cage
that.
and
Like if they're going to start off with them like kind of arguing or something like that. He's like, and I told you what would happen.
maybe Wardlow. I don't think it's a good idea. Maybe Wardlow plays some sort of role in the finish of Jericho. Well, if you remember the finish of the MJF Sammy Guevara match, Sammy Guevara basically had it won until Pinnacle came out and interfered in order to beat Sammy. So in this case, maybe Wardlow is the Pinnacle, supposed to be the Pinnacle interference for the Jericho match, but he turns his back, then walks off and allows Jericho to have to finish the match on his terms.
I also wonder if
don't know.
Sammy's involved in that match because it's Houston. Then I
Yeah.
wonder
Well, he has a match against Sean Spears earlier. He has his own
I didn't know
one-on-one
that.
with Sean Spears, and he's going to have which we can all expect he's going to win because God knows the hometown hero should win in his hometown. And he's going to have a promo. So he's got both the talking. They're giving him. He's having both a talking segment and a match. So they're giving Sammy a bunch of stuff to do on his hometown show, which they should, because that only makes logical sense. Right. I can't imagine there couldn't possibly be a successful wrestling outfit somewhere that continually beats its wrestlers in their hometown. No one would do something
like with a boner for
stupid. No one would be that stupid, would they?
I think it's the World Wildlife Fund. They're the ones.
That might be it. Those damn pandas don't know how to book a wrestling match. Never let a panda book a wrestling show is what we learned.
That's if there's anything you get from this show after 11 episodes is that don't let a panda book your matches.
That's right. That's a t-shirt right there. But yeah, it was underwhelming. But
after that, and Sammy came out, and then everybody started coming out and rescuing each other, and then they set up the next labor in Houston, right here in Houston, Texas, which is don't going to be any Judas effect.
That's right.
Which I'm very curious about that because I almost felt like it's an overprotective move, so I'm very curious to see how they do this.
Well, you know what?
Also, there's no Judas song.
There's no Judas song.
Which is a weird stipulation. Like, oh no, now Jericho too. It's not like he draws power from that song. But
maybe he does.
You're gonna have to sing that shit a cappella next week.
Well, I mean, that's obviously what they want every fan to do, to the point where like TNT has been and AEW have been tweeting out. I bet they will. AEW has been tweeting out the lyrics for the whole song and telling everyone so you can sing it. And they've had like Smart Mark Sterling has been tweeting out like, I'm going to sue you for this. You're not allowed to do that. Cease and desist. So it's
program basically.
So yes, I won't be surprised if they're handing out lyric sheets at the door to make sure everyone can see it, can sing it.
Like Psalm what? Psalm 316?
Yeah. But it's been more interesting that, they said not only can he not use the Judas effect, if he does, he automatically loses. But it plays into the story, because if you pay attention, he has won every single labor of Jericho with the Judas Effect.
Yeah, I mean, he's won almost every single match with the
No,
Judas.
he's won most of them. He's won matches without it. He has won other matches without it.
Yeah, but that's rare.
But rare. He doesn't. I mean, he does use it as his primary finish. So it'll be interesting. We'll get to see firsthand.
Jericho ending like a submission. That mark out huge for that.
Well, it has to be. It has to be either a Walls of Jericho or a Lion Salt. I mean, what else is it going to
be? Win a match on a Lion Salt? This ain't like
no one would see it coming.
Yeah.
Well, it's either that or I mean, if you know, well, they both of their finishes are submissions. Or code breaker, but he doesn't do those as much anymore. But like, because MJS finishes the Salt of the Earth, so he could counter a submission finish with a submission finish. So
right, I think that's the best. That'd be awesome.
And that would be the most humiliating thing for MGF, for him to say, "I give up," after he made the Inner Circle say, "We give up." So
I'd mark it even more if he goes back to the Lion Tamer one, which was the standing one versus the seated Boston Crab. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm asking for too much at this point.
Well, he did that. He's done it because it depends on what he's doing. Because he used that against Cody in their full year match.
It depends on the size of the wrestler, really.
Yeah, it depends on the size of the wrestler.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that. And then, but that's not all, because we also had the premiere episode of Rampage, which in a lot of ways, I mean, this was an easy watch. Just 45 minutes without commercials, 3 matches.
Yeah.
They did not waste any time. No.
It was just title match after title.
Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Yes, and all title. Well, they wanted to start off hot, so they started off hot with 3 title matches.
It's not going to be the title match show. That'd be.
But the other thing I thought was interesting, and not to take anything away from the main event. The main event was Britt Baker versus Red Velvet for the women's championship. But it also felt like, because it's on a Friday, and it's on a Friday at 9 o'clock Central and 10 o'clock Eastern, that they're doing like the old Saturday night main event booking, where they start with the big match first, and they give that a lot of time and get it out of the way first, and then have the other matches afterwards.
Or like we talked about what they did during the basketball displacement schedule, like that type of thing.
Yeah, that same thing. Because this started with a big giant match, Kenny Omega versus Christian Cage for the Impact World Championship.
Hey, by the way, who's the announcer for Rampage? Because she's pretty good.
That's Dasha Gonzalez.
Oh, that's Dasha.
That's Dasha, who she was a ring announcer for quite a while for WWE and left. And she was the original ring announcer for Dark, like when Dark was matches before Dynamite, before COVID. She was the ring announcer. She was a ring announcer for quite a while Justin Roberts was not able to fly out to Jacksonville, and she still does. Good. Yeah, I mean, she still does. I don't know if she'll do it every time. I suspect, because this was taped on 2 different nights. This was a win because they taped Rampage by itself. More frequently, Rampage will be taped the same night as Dynamite.
That's awesome. So
I don't know if she'll always get to do it or not, but she did a really, really good job with it. And they had the new 4-man announce booth, Excalibur tying everything together alongside Taz, Chris Jericho, and Mark Henry. So we finally get to see what Mark Henry's like on commentary and doing some interview bits. And I felt like they moved to the 4-man because Mark is still coming across as inexperienced.
Green. Yeah.
Because whenever they threw to him, he would ramble on for a little bit of time and struggle to make points.
His style is also so much more different than theirs, because he's got a lot slower style of talking. So it's one of those things that I think it's going to take them a little bit to get the chemistry going.
I felt like, because my memory was when they announced Rampage, it said it was going to be Excalibur and Mark Henry on the announce booth. So it feels like, they've been going through some rounds of rehearsals or whatnot. Eventually went like, all right, well, we don't want to start with that. Let's go to like a 3-man or a 4-man or something like that. And it feels like the 4-man is basically that. Make sure Chris Jericho is on the show, but not make him wrestle. So he's not having to wrestle twice every week because he's 50 years old.
Well, yeah. And also the labor is supposed to be a big taxing thing, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, especially if they're taping the same night as Dynamite, you don't want to have to make him wrestle like twice every night. But it's a short show. So like Chris Jericho shouldn't be wrestling all the time, because that is TV time somebody else does need.
Right. Exactly.
But this started with like Danny Garcia. Exactly. Or QT Marshall. But this or Matt Sydal. No, I'm just laming off people that Shmeek hates. But this was a big match, and they did a lot to get Christian Cage on their side. As much as people weren't interested in him on Wednesday, They were on his side here when they came out. And this was a hot crowd. They were ready for some wrestling, and they were up the whole time. Tons and tons and tons of near falls. Kenny Omega did his best to make Christian Cage look like a legitimate threat for the AEW championship. And he did a really good job with that. They let Christian Cage get out of almost everything Kenny Omega attempted, let him reverse almost everything Kenny Omega attempted.
Well, now that I think about it, it's kind of what he did to Dante Martin too, but this was just longer and he lost at the end.
Yeah.
So
but not this time, because this time at the end, the Young Bucks come running out with the chair while Don Callis takes the ref, throws the chair into the ring. Kenny Omega attempts the one-winged angel in the chair, the move he used to beat Jon Moxley at Revolution. Right. But this time, Christian Cage, I assume, has been doing his homework and watched that match. So he wriggles out of it, flips it around into the kill switch, aka the Unprettier, and Unpretties.
Prettier is a name better.
Oh, it's a much better name. It is a much better name.
From that. That's a joke.
Because WWE has Unprettier trademarked, so they can't use it.
Oh,
they can't use anybody's. WWE trademarks everything everybody has and claims ownership on everything everybody has, so everything has to get renamed whenever it comes out. It's like the black hole of.
I still call it the Unprettier.
It is. I mean, it's the Unprettier. And so, they did. Christian Cage did a fantastic Unprettier. You were talking about an Unprettier. He unprettied Kenny Omega's face into the seat of that chair. He took that bump. Great. That was a great bump he did into that chair. Laid down dead, and it counted 1, 2, 3. Christian Cage is your new Impact World Champion.
Now does Christian Cage defend this title also on Impact too? I'm assuming like he's going to be on Impact a lot more.
They've already announced him for.
You think they'll prove like views, right? Because they've had Christian Cage their champion.
Yeah, they've already announced him for. They've already announced him for multiple Impact taping dates.
It's part of like hey, we're helping you out, Impact. Here's
exactly. And in some ways you saw this coming because I didn't mention this, but Impact airs on Thursday in between Dynamite and Rampage. So Kenny Omega and Alex Marvez were there. I assume they taped this at Dynamite. They were on Impact this week doing promos for Rampage, and Christian Cage and several of the Impact interviewers were there also doing promos for Rampage. So they were hyping Rampage in the title match on Rampage all throughout Impact. This past week, leading up to this, which led up to Scott D'Amore once again was here and was on. He was not on commentary this time because they had 4 people in that booth, and 5 would have been a bit too much. But he did, But he did come running out right afterwards to present the belts to Christian Cage, and they have already announced. And they had a nice little promo behind the scenes with Orange Cassidy lounging behind there. I don't know. And he was in the crowd too, watching along with Varsity Blonde. So I don't know. Does that mean that he's thinking about a challenge for the Impact title at some point, or is it just because he wants to be there? I actually half expected for him to walk up and challenge for it. So I don't know. Or maybe because they're going to have stuff on Rampage soon.
If they did that, you know how many people would watch Impact if they had Orange Cassidy on there regularly? Yeah, I mean, I would. Yeah, I definitely would. And if I would, I should be.
So my understanding is this was not the original plan. The original plan was that Kenny Omega was going to drop the AAA belt, but was going to be keeping the Impact belt for a while, and so that he would look nice and strong going into All Out against Hangman. But once that changed, once the All Out main event changed, everything rippled outwards. So they decided they had to give Christian Cage a win over Kenny before All Out in order for anyone to believe he had any sort of chance and or care about that match, because that's the main event. So this is all here. So they've changed everything that they were planning on doing with Kenny in Impact in order to make people buy the All Out main event. Which also meant that they had to change the main event, the ending of the co-main event for Triplemania because of the change at All Out. And I think it all works well in the long run. It keeps Kenny in AAA for a little bit longer. It would have been long term. It's probably a much better story because this is Kenny Omega's. They said it several times. First singles loss since August of 2019. That was a long time ago. A long time ago.
Pre-pandemic. I mean,
Pre-pandemic. And even in tag team wrestling, he didn't ever eat the pin. He didn't always get the pin, but he didn't eat the pin either. So it's been a long, that was if I remember right, that was the Pac match at there with some caveats. If I remember right, that was the Pac match at All Out where he got submitted. Now, the caveat to that is that he did lose to Jon Moxley in November of 2019 because that was a lights out match.
It was an unsanctioned match.
It was unsanctioned, so they don't count it. And I think he had maybe like one pinfall loss to Pac at in their Iron Man match before Revolution, but because that was an Iron Man match, the individual pinfalls don't count. It's just because he won the match. He took a pinfall loss at some point in it, but he won the match.
Right. Not a pinfall loss, really.
Right. Yeah. So this is, but even then, you're talking about it's been nearly 2 years since someone actually got a 1, 2, 3 on. That's how protected he is.
Right.
And I think it would have been a much, much stronger story if that first person was Adam Page doing it at the pay-per-view for the title. But I guess obviously their plan.
It'd be a Page, and so that's what's.
So now the question is, do they do that instead at Full Gear or Revolution? Do they use the entire fall to have Kenny Omega versus CM Punk and Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson and get back to this at Revolution? Or do they get back to it right away?
Or are you assuming that Christian Cage is not going to beat Kenny for the AEW title?
I assume Christian Cage is not going to beat Kenny. I would be amazed.
It's like, hey, good job with this. They gave us like a little more interesting than the cakewalk we thought it was going to be. Yeah. But like at the time, like, no one's believing that.
No one believes it, but enough people see, they've seen, okay, wow, he did beat him and he took the title. So now I'm interested.
It has some sauce, but still the dish is going to be the same at the end.
Yeah. More people are interested in watching it. And they've seen that he had a good match, and this was a good match. And they said, all right. And they said, all right, they had a good match across.
This made sense. It was a good
match. And they said, like, all right, I know what their match chemistry is going to be like. I've seen that in like 15 minutes on TV, they had a really good match, and they were almost certainly holding back for All Out. So I can now think that all things being equal, their pay-per-view main event match, which should go a good 30 minutes and should be really good. And this is not going to be the first time back, a little tired Christian Cage of his first match, but this should be like a really good.
The Hardy family office feud for time, so everything. So he's got some under his belt. The ring rush should be shaken off by now.
So on the complete opposite side of this was the match following it: Miro versus Fuego del Sol for the TNT Championship, and Fuego gets signed to AEW if he wins.
Which is weird because, like, also, was there a possibility that he could get the TNT title and not be signed to AEW?
I guess so. It's an open championship.
I mean, they were trying to tell us, like, okay, all right.
It's an open championship. I mean, technically, Kenny has been the Christian or the Impact champions without being signed to those promotions.
Doesn't matter.
It's not like awesome.
Fuego del Sol got rewarded for failure.
But which seemed more likely: Christian Cage beating Kenny Omega at All Out, or Fuego del Sol, all 98 pounds of him, beating Miro for the TNT Championship.
No, that was never good. I mean, he got his for a while, but then he got his own DDTs in, and that's great. And then Miro woke up, and then bam, it was over just like that. Kick, game over, bam. And then
and they did some nice storytelling with it too, because
I grew up where if you fail, you don't get rewarded for shit. But I guess when you lose to Miro, you still get a contract.
That's right. Well, you know what I figured?
Win.
But you know what? And it makes sense to me. Well, one thing I'd say, I like the piece of storytelling that well, hang on. I got something to say about that. But before that, I want to say I like the nice bit of extra storytelling they were doing in that what Lee Johnson actually used to hurt Miro last week was the tornado DDT. And then and then Fuego del Sol, he's like, well, that's my move. I'm using that too, and it hurt Miro too. And they're like setting up that Miro has a weakness.
You're my Miro. I got tornado DDT for you.
That Miro may indeed
have a fucking field day against Miro. Apparently.
Miro may have a weakness that if he doesn't solve it and get a counter to it, Miro has a weakness to the tornado DDT. So
yeah, Jungle Boy, that's another one. That's another guy that used tornado DDT.
well,
so
and you've heard my theory that Jungle Boy should be the one to beat Miro and become the TNT champion.
I could see that working actually, but after a while.
After a while, but the Fuego is still. So I know a lot of people laugh at it. It makes total sense to me. If anyone, and I'm sure the people at AEW have been watching everyone that comes out in front of the live crowd since they've gone back to touring. And the one thing we talked about, who is over, who's not over on all these dark matches, it's been very obvious. Fuego del Sol is super over. He gets a super pop whenever he comes out. So you want to keep your TV going. You want to keep your live gate going. What you pay attention to is,
who's
the people who don't get a pop, don't put them on your TV because it's a waste of your time. Somebody who is over with the crowd, you're like, all right, I need to put that person on. It doesn't matter whether he looks like he can win a wrestling match or not. I need to put him on my TV to keep people watching my TV.
People what they want.
That's right. You go. So it makes perfect sense to me that he was never going to win, but it makes perfect sense to me that they put him on the TV because he is over with that crowd. It's not like you have a guy that you decide should be champion and you keep putting him in matches and he keeps getting booed and booed and booed and no one likes him, but you keep for years trying to get him over even though no one likes him. I can't imagine.
Rocky Maivia thing.
I can't imagine a company that would do that relentlessly over and over again. But and then you had a really nice moment that was a pure shoot where Sammy comes out with the contract, and
I thought that was
Fuego did not know that was going to happen. So that's really nice, and it's a nice moment to have right before you have Britt Baker, DMD, who was probably even more over here than she was on Wednesday. People were chanting her name along with her against Red Velvet. And they worked it that way.
Red Velvet started going for her injured arm and stuff, and trying to take her finisher. So I'm it almost seems like Red Velvet was kind of healing it up just slightly.
She was. No, she undoubtedly was. It was very. I mean, Red Velvet. We talk about Red Velvet being booed on Wednesday. She was way booed here. This crowd was going to treat her like the heel no matter what. So she wrestled it like the heel, and Britt Baker wrestled like the babyface, and it worked. Yeah, she took off the cast. She tried to do the lockjaw against Britt Baker. Baker had to reverse it and do the lockjaw with her other arm because she couldn't use her regular arm. It was a little clunky early on, but the last 3 or 4 minutes of this I thought was really good, much better than I was expecting.
Oh yeah,
I really liked the finish.
Better than
I thought the finish was really good. I really liked the finish, but
I like that she was going, but of course, and with Britt, I think what they're basically gonna, of course, I think it goes without saying, Britt won. She retained the championship over Red Velvet. But I think what they're gonna try to do, which only makes sense to me, basically, except I think Britt's just end up being a cocky face, kind of like what The Rock was for a while. Just like someone who kind of talks shit about the opponent, and which isn't a typically face thing to do, but if you like what they're saying, then it's fine. That type of stuff. So
well, they're playing it close to the vest. It seems like she needs to be, but it's like here she was the face during the entire match because she had to be. But then, as the instant the match was over, she turned back into a dastardly heel. She tried to beating up Red Velvet. She has Rebel coming out. She's trying to give her the curb stamp on the belt. And Chris Statlander jumps in the ring to make the save because they're obviously setting up and then Baker versus Crit Hanna. And then JB Hayter comes up. Well, she did say that while her arm was broken, she needed some backup. Jamie Hayter was signed to AEW. She's an English wrestler. So she was signed to AEW early on. So she was on and off TV. She was regularly on Dark and on and off TV from the start of Dynamite up through the pandemic. She came in with B Priestley. And then when the pandemic happened, she had to go back to England and she couldn't come back.
But was she good? This seems weird.
She was all right. She was okay.
This seems like a weird push.
No, what's really weird is her last match on Dynamite was against Britt Baker, which she lost when Britt Baker was a baby face.
Okay, that's really weird. Okay,
that is weird.
So,
but no, she was.
Yeah, but do they remember?
She was a good. Well, she looked. I didn't remember, and not that I didn't remember. Is that she looked so totally different because she's changed her hair color and her gear and everything. So they had to say her name before I realized who it was, because I couldn't see her that clearly. but she had really good heel presence. She was better as a character than in the ring, but she's had some time to get some more ring time. So we'll see what she's like in the ring now.
Yeah.
I think
another women's wrestler. I'm like, okay, all right.
Well, she's probably a bit more experienced than some of the other ones, so it makes probably a bit more sense than to have they could maybe have done it with Diamante and given Diamante some time, but maybe I guess they don't want to do that. I don't know. So
Big Swole, I thought they're gonna have a program with her
if they want. Yeah, well, Big Swole apparently is she has Crohn's disease and it comes up and goes. So she hasn't been around this last week, and her tweets make it sound like she's having another course. So hopefully that doesn't get in the way of whatever program she's been doing. But it wasn't going to be Bunny because Bunny's doing stuff,
right?
And they could have been Diamante, but if they're
did it
somebody
need to be
else,
anybody? That's another thing. Like, does Britt Baker need somebody? Like,
yeah, well, she said she needs somebody to watch her back because her wrist is broken, so she can't do it for herself. And Rebel is not going to do that. Rebel's there for comedy.
Or Reba, sorry, not Reba, not Rebel.
Right. But probably if Bea Priestley hadn't signed with NXT, they probably have used her because it's a good way to get like another good.
Bea Priestley signed with NXT?
Yeah, Bea Priestley signed with NXT. She's on the NXT UK. It's entirely possible. Well, more likely, she's with NXT UK, so it might be she'll just be on NXT UK forever. No one will ever see her. She'll never make it to main roster, but she won't be on anything else.
Yeah,
who knows? Or maybe after a couple of years, she'll give up and want to come back to AEW. I don't know.
So is Britt slated for the Houston show next week?
I don't know.
And
they haven't released a full.
They moved to Friday for the CM Punk thing. I feel a little short, but
they haven't released a full card, but I feel like she has to be because they've got to set up her match with Chris Statlander for All Out.
Probably
so they need to
or some shit, right?
They need to at least, I'm sure, but they need to at least have her and Jamie Hayter come out. They need to do a promo. I don't think she's gonna have a match, but she needs to either have a promo or a pre-tape where she introduces her muscle and talks about smack.
They ended the show this way. That's obviously leads up to usually the opening segment the next time.
You would think so. That seems like that's what they've got to do. So we'll see. They haven't announced the full card for Wednesday, but I'm anxious. They announced the matches, but not all the other ancillary stuff.
And I'm going to take some time right now because I might be a little bit tired next week after our show because I'm actually wrestling in my first match on Saturday. Right. That's right.
Doomsday Wrestling at Numbers. All right.
I'm in a 4-way match, so that's going to be interesting. I'm wrestling against the Lunchador. And I'm wrestling against the Chest Hair Assassin, and I'm wrestling against Hot Commodity. So it's us and Precious Jewels, and I play kind of I'm from Parts Unknown. I have a bodysuit on. I'm real freaky. It's pretty funny. In the Houston area, check it out. We're socially distancing. We're encouraging masks and all that stuff. So if you have some time on Saturday night, come on out.
All right. I expect to see
right here in Houston.
That's right. I expect to see lots of video from that match before we go to watch 4 hours of AEW next Wednesday or this coming Wednesday. I'm excited.
For sure.
All right. Yep. Good. It was a good week, strong week. Lots of happenings through and around the Forbidden Door. And next week is besides us finally after a year and a half getting our Houston show. And then we just get to be the lead into the first dance and people starting to lose their minds.
Yeah. So by this time next week, well, when you hear from us, you'll be like, oh, wow, CM Punk actually showed up and you know what he did. Well, I wish he did more. We'll be like, so that didn't happen. So I'm hoping the latter thing didn't happen.
I'm hoping it's not the other one. I will be amazed. This will be a crazy, crazy podcast if next week they're coming here and saying it wasn't CM Punk.
That's a good thing. So,
right. It wasn't CM Punk. That would be, I don't know what will be on our podcast if that's what happens. There will be a riot everywhere.
I mean, so many Chicago fans, that 12,000, that news that inflated, like they're going to be pissed off.
That's a lot of people to put in one place, wanting one thing and withholding it from them. That will not go over well.
Right. Yeah. So basically expect us to hear us talk a shitload about CM Punk.
So what we're actually going to be doing next week is talking a lot about CM Punk. A little bit about All Out coming up. Some about how awesome it is to see AEW in person. Well, everybody says like their live AEW shows are like the best live wrestling experience they've ever had. So you'll hear us talking a lot
That's a
about the
bar.
live,
I've enjoyed
you
them
know,
that I've been to personally. So yeah, that's a high bar.
so it's a high bar.
Yeah.
So you expect to hear us talking a lot about the live experience of AEW and then a lot about CM Punk. We shall see.
I'm a street coach. Wait, did we get to that part yet? You cut out.
You cut out. We get to which part? No, we haven't got to that part. I was waiting.
Okay.
I was waiting for you to be clear.
Okay.
But technical difficulties notwithstanding, I'm Joshua Starnes.
And me, Coach.
And this has been All Elite Reviewing. Cue the music.